It is an enormous topic, but there's a lot that we don't realize about love. One of the things that I have learned kind of recently in the last few years is that love is in fact part of our survival system. So the implications of falling in love, becoming involved in an intimate relationship are way more profound than we normally realize. And it's the romance that gets us started, of course. We get attracted to somebody and we start to get involved. And as soon as we become physically intimate, we begin to activate that survival system, which means that the importance of each partner to the other is vastly magnified, but that is not necessarily conscious. The survival system operates outside of consciousness. So the intensity with which we feel potential slights or neglect or disinterest on the part of a partner are attributed largely to the fact that we count on them for survival. This is our first experience of love is with our mothers, who keep us alive during the early parts of our lives where we're not able to take care of ourselves. So you can see that emotional attachment and survival are closely linked right from the start. So what ends up happening is that often couples get into conflict, sometimes slight, sometimes quite intense. But what they don't realize is all the layers that are beneath the conflict. So one of the things that I really appreciate about the developing theory in this field is the fact that more and more therapists who are working with couples are becoming aware of the fact that conflict in a couple relationship is a no-fault situation. And it's pretty hard to get people to understand that it's no fault, because it always feels like the reason I'm acting badly is because you're acting badly, right? I'm just reacting to you and what you're doing. And the fact is, that's true. You're each reacting to the other. But what we don't realize is that it's our patterns and expectations of our patterns of relating and our expectations of what we think love should look like that is mismatched. It's mismatching. So each is expecting something of the other and behaving in a way to try and elicit that, but the other does not have the same interpretation.
You're talking really about the different languages, if you will, that men and women speak. We don't all seem to understand the same language at times, but you mentioned two terms at the beginning of that. One was falling in love, and the other was becoming intimate. And yes. I want to address both of those separately and then together. The question about falling in love is a long-standing myth, in my view, promulgated by the movies. It's a Hollywood theme. You see somebody, you fall in love. It's beyond your control. You just find yourself swimming in love all of a sudden, and then you react and do whatever you do with it. It's a myth. Love is something that is ultimately a decision, in my view. You find someone with whom you think you're compatible and with whom you think you want to spend a lifetime and so on, and you make a decision, a commitment to do just that. That's what love is all about, making a commitment. And the other term you mentioned about when you become intimate. And, of course, that leads to today's open sexuality in the world. And once you become physically intimate, then people say, love follows that. I'm not sure that you fall in love. I'm not sure that love follows intimacy, and some would argue that's backwards anyway. And so, first you get intimate, and then you want to justify it, so you pronounce love. Am I off beam here, off the line?
Well, not really, but I think perhaps yes, the Hollywood version of falling in love is kind of idealistic and fantasy. But I do believe that people, when people say they are falling in love or they have fallen in love, I think they are describing something quite real, because the thing that the force that attracts one person to another, a lot of that is not conscious. All we know is that we really want this person around. And, the world has become brighter because they're in it and they love us and all that. So all that kind of honeymoon phase of a relationship, it's real. It's very real. But this is this is a phrase we use to describe it. But it contains a great deal of background that we're not fully aware of. And I'm not going to go into that right now, because that's like a 1 to 2 hour lecture. But I think while you're right, the phrase can refer to that kind of Hollywood mythical thing. It also describes something quite real that we have no other words for.
Now, you also mentioned the word relationship, and I think we all long for relationships, plural, that we need relationships in our life. It provides stability, provides some balance, and so on. And then to be in love with somebody, is that perhaps the ultimate relationship? You set that relationship above all others. Is that fair?
Well, it would become the primary. This is the person who can call you any time of the night or day, and you will drop everything and go to them. It would be a primary relationship, and that's part of that survival system activation, which is it is activated usually by sexual involvement that kind of cements it, right? Which accounts for the intensity with which we respond to one another, particularly if we become afraid that the other doesn't love us quite as much as we love them. Does that make sense?
Oh, indeed. And that becomes the problem within maintaining the relationship, is looking for some balance or equality of the love, giving equally from one to the other, back and forth, and so on. And that's the hard part, of course, because you mentioned before about, or I guess I mentioned before, the different languages that men and women speak, understanding. And there's a philosophy, I think, centered on a book called The Love Languages. And the reference being that, women speak one love language, men another. And oftentimes it's been drilled down to suggest that women just want to feel loved and men just want to feel respected. And that vast difference. But, if a man goes out to work and brings home the bread and can fill the household with bread, he's looking for some kind of pat on the back or pat on the head or something, recognizing that he's doing what he thinks is right. Whereas a woman, on the other hand, can be, looking for a place to sit down in a house full of bread, and all she wants is to feel loved. And the two don't seem to understand that, and that's where so many relationships start to break down, and indeed do break.
Yes, well, the work that's been done on intimate relationships and the work that's being done in couples therapy goes even deeper than that. that's kind of a mid-stage to bedrock. Bedrock is that the love of the other is absolutely essential. So, yes, the man brings home the bread, and he is showing his partner how much he cares by doing this. And so what he is looking for is a reciprocal kind of sense of the partner acknowledging that this isn't just a material thing, but this is his expression of love, and then returning that. So it's not just language. That's where a lot of couples therapy got stuck for many years, because they were looking at just those differences. But when you get down to bedrock, it's a total commonality. Each partner is looking for full appreciation and equality of love from the other. They want to know they can really count on the other to be there when they need them. And they want to know that the other would do anything for them, just as they would do anything for the other. Do you see where I'm going with this?
I do indeed, and I can't help but think about movies that try and depict the various degrees of love and the breakdown of love. I mean, the love story itself is a movie, and that's life, isn't it? But the man that goes out to work and bring home the bread, as I said, he's really building the house, filling the house with things, with stuff, with comforts, and that's his job. His work is his job to provide for the family. And some people can get carried away with that. And in today's society, we see, two people in the household working in order to provide that house and home. And right away, the man's role is challenged with the woman going out to contribute to the bringing home the bread. And then we often hear of arguments and turmoil within the house that when they both come home, the man feels obliged to sit in the lazy boy chair while the wife has got to go make supper and clean up. And that's a recipe for disaster right there. And through all of that, a woman's needs and wants and desires have often been reduced to simply, show me the affection, show me the love that you showed me when we first met. And, stop pointing to the size of the house and the stuff that's in it and the clothes in the closet. That doesn't do anything for me anymore. Am I making a point there?
Yes. But one of the things that where you can get stuck in that is that the man's value is not just bringing home the bread. And this is where a lot of the men that we worked with when I was at New Directions, and New Directions still works with, see themselves only as breadwinners. That's their only value. What they don't realize is that their value is much greater than that. Their value, their presence in the family, their emotional responsiveness to the spouse and the children is even more important. So you can have a few less toys or luxuries, but if you've got that presence and interest of each partner to the other, to the children, that's where you've got real family. So you can see families who are cash strapped but happy as long as they're not stressed out by having their survival in jeopardy. But as long as they've got enough money for food and enough and a roof over their head, you can see people who can be quite happy because they've got the love.
The foundation.
The foundation is the love the engagement of each person in the family with all the others.
And we're almost out of time, and we haven't even touched on the sexual impact of this. And you even opened the program by mentioning the attraction that is sexual is first. It used to be that you would find love, commit to love, get married, and then sex entered the picture. But today we've flipped it around, it seems, in our society, and sex now comes first and may or may not lead to love. There's lots of indication that people, to them, as the one-night stand reference comes to mind. And it used to be that people would say they would make love. And today they're more open and direct. They say, no, now we have sex. And that's a whole issue unto itself. I wonder if we need to come back and spend more time.
Oh, well, that is an issue which would take more time, yes. No question about that. Yeah, well, we've got, 5 or 6 hours worth of conversation here in these topics because they do run quite deep and they are quite profound. So, yeah, you can't cover this in 20 minutes, but, you can get a start.
Well, and we have a start. I'm just asking, I guess, if we can come back to the topic another day.
Of course we can.
Yeah, I mean, we both agree, I think, that relationships are fundamental, and relationships bring with them all kinds of, you give me this and I'll give you that, and sex becomes a part of relationships, and sometimes today, as I mentioned, there's sex for the sake of sex and no relationship. One wonders, what does that do for anybody? But
well, it's a biological imperative.
No,
we are built to reproduce.
And
so as soon as we become ready to reproduce, we start wanting to reproduce. Boom.
You've got to the bottom line pretty quick right there, my lady. As I said,
yeah.
we've just touched the surface, so really appreciate you taking on the topic, and by all means, let's come back to it another day, if not the next visit, but certainly soon, and see if we can get a little more information on this, because I think this becomes fundamental to your practice, is that the breakdown in relationships, the breakdown in marriage, the breakdown in the giving and taking is what brings people to your door saying, I've got a problem.
You betcha.
All right, another day, and another conversation on that line.